Before we get into this week's episode, I need you to know it's an amazing episode, but some of the visuals got a little messed up. But I don't want that to distract you from the revelation that God is going to give you on how to intentionally date and be prepared for marriage. So make sure you watch the whole video, and I'm telling you, this is a good one. What's up, fam? Welcome back to our channel. My name is Tim, and this is another episode of the W Podcast. I am super excited because I have amazing guests today, a couple. It's been a while, I feel like, since we've had a couple on the podcast, and they're going to share their story of dating. They're going to share their story of engagement that they're currently in. They have a few more months until they get married. So being able to share that fresh perspective of what's the engagement season like, because a lot of people don't talk about it. Honestly, I've heard, especially when I was engaged, somebody was like, engagement is the time that everybody can't wait to be engaged and everybody can't wait to not be engaged. Like, you want to get out of that season as fast as possible, just because everything that comes with wedding planning and trying to merge two families. So I'm excited to bring them on. Faith and Thomas, they are, I'm not even going to spoil it. I'm just going to bring them on, let them introduce themselves, and we'll get right into it. How y'all doing, fam?
Hey, Tim.
We're doing wonderful. Thank you for having us on.
Excited to be here. Thanks for having us.
Absolutely. So I would love to just jump right in. I'm so glad that y'all are here. If y'all could just give our audience a little bit about yourselves, and then we can kind of get into the how we met stuff, but just, who you are individually.
Sure,
absolutely. So, hey guys, great to see y'all. I'm from Missouri, born and raised, currently live in North Carolina, and I'm very into entrepreneurship here and building amidst many different things, but coaching is one of my loves. And I feel like the Lord really instilled that in me a few years ago. And so I said yes and began that journey of building a business, and we'll, I guess, lead into our story here in a minute. But that's where I currently am in coaching and speaking and entrepreneurship. So.
I'm born and raised here in Raleigh, North Carolina, where we both live now. And, for me growing up, I grew up in a family where my parents got divorced when I was about 5 years old, and just kind of grew up in this environment where there wasn't a lot of authentic relationship, not a lot of that sense of belonging. And that really instilled in me a desire to fill my life with those things, really focus on the relationships with people closest to me. And I grew up in the church, and my parents would kind of pass us back and forth at church on Sundays and that sort of thing. And it was just kind of something that we did. And then in high school, I did an internship with my church, and I started doing all the sound and light and all the video production and everything. And it became all about that and nothing about a relationship with God. And throughout college, I really drifted away from having any sort of relationship with God. I was kind of 10% in as a Christian, 90% out. And looking back on it now, I remember it as just a very dark season, just very clouded. And luckily, we serve a God who chases after us and will come after even the worst sinner. And that's what he did for me. Just a year and a half ago, he really pursued me and came after me as the one sheep in the field. And I'm so grateful that he did. I was saved again in August of last year and have just been a totally different guy since. And it's really amazing to see what God can do. And if he can, completely turn my life around, I believe there's anything that he could do.
Yeah. Absolutely.
Thank you for sharing that. That was, Thomas, I actually got, well, not me, but my parents got divorced around the same age when I was 5 as well. So I know what that can be like as a kid, seeing your parents. This is off script, but I'm curious for you, did seeing that, having your parents get divorced, did that prevent you growing up from wanting to get married?
It's a good question. I don't think it did. I've always wanted to get married, always wanted to have a family. It definitely made me want to do some things very differently than how my parents did. But I come from a very loving family, and even through that, again, even through sin, God can create something really beautiful. So I have a wonderful family. Everybody's healthy. So much to be grateful for. So much love to go around. But when I think about, this season that Faith and I are stepping into, and when we talk and dream about and cast a vision for the kind of family we want to build together, since she also comes from a divorced family as well.
Yeah, mine are divorced as well.
It just, it did really strike me, when I started going to church, to a church that really was filled with people who were making disciples of each other, I would mention to them, my parents got divorced, and they would be like, "Oh, I'm so sorry."
Yeah, same.
Whereas usually people in society would just be like, "Oh,
Yeah.
Right.
God," because there really is there's sin there.
Yeah.
There's sin there. As much as a lot of times we don't want to look at that,
Right.
there is, and it has far-reaching impacts.
Yeah, that's something that I feel like we discussed a lot really early on, is what were the impacts of generational sin that has occurred for you in your life, and what has just God healed you from. I feel like he's done such a big healing and restoration in both of our lives, because it's so if we're not careful, it can lead to generation, right? And stopping with us was something that we were both so passionate about from the get-go. Of there are, of course, things that we want to replicate that our parents did in their marriages and how they raised us, and there's things that we would like to do differently. And so really talking through those and getting on the same page about that, because it does shape a person, right? Your childhood experiences really do have an impact on who you become as an adult and what you choose to do. And so that was really important for us to speak a lot about.
Yeah, I love that. Both things that you all said. I mean, when me and Pauline were engaged, we did something similar where we had a book. I forget the name of the book, but essentially it had a whole family tree where you go back. Your father's sin, your grandfather's sin, not just sin, but just your father's, what they did, your grandfather, your great-great-grandfather. And one of the things that was striking for us was seeing on both sides, every generation had experienced divorce. Yep. And we were like, we want to break that in Jesus' name. We don't want that generational curse. And it's not just divorce. There's other things, whether it be physical, like diabetes or anything like that runs in your family bloodline. It may be helpful to know so that you and your future spouse can be prepared to fight that, or that could be potentially a challenge. But Thomas, I agree with you that you still can have a healthy family, even though there was divorce that may have occurred. And I feel for me, my family, when they got divorced, it's just a picture now of Romans 8:28. All things work together for the good. I was able to get 2 additional parents out of it. I have 2 other brothers. So it's just an amazing experience when God can get into it and work everything out. So I loved what you all said. Now, I want to transition because everybody loves talking about relationships. Everybody loves talking about how did you 2 meet? What was your story? So I'm curious. I would love to know, and whoever wants to go can go. How did you all meet? Because Thomas, you just mentioned that you got saved a year and a half ago, or you really started recommitting your life to the Lord, if I heard you correctly. So I don't know. Did you all meet before that? Like, what's your story? I'm so curious.
It's a great question.
Go for it.
So for us, to interject back into my story, right? I was in that period of my life when I was just really lost, and I'd actually had a prior relationship for about 5 years, all throughout college, and I had been considering at the time moving in with that person and moving into a different state with them, and all these things. And I'm really glad that I believe God was working in my life, even though I wasn't a believer at the time, to help show me through people that he brought in my life that it just was not wise for us to move in together before we got married. And so we ended up ending that relationship. And then in the about 2 years that followed, I realized, like, wow, I really hurt this person, because I got so emotionally invested with them for 5 years without any of the level of commitment that I really believe is so key to have. There's a book that I read called I Kissed Dating Goodbye. Faith and I both read it, actually, and it's all about this idea that intimacy is the reward of commitment. Yeah. And so in that relationship, I was very intimate, emotionally, spiritually, physically, all those things, and yet there was no actual commitment there. I remember, when the relationship ended, literally just like handing back one little cardboard box of stuff, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so God really took me from that, and he put this desire in my heart. He's like, Thomas, you just hurt this person really deeply because you didn't know who you were as a man first before you went that far and gave away so much of your heart to this person, took so much advantage of theirs. And so that really lit a fire on me to not just be a 10% in, 90% out Christian, or just being just floating through life, but instead to actually chase after and
good.
choose for myself. Because at the end of the day, it's a choice what I was going to believe. I believe that you can't ever prove anything 100%, but you can put in the energy and effort yourself to tip the scales to try and really choose what the foundation of your life is going to be. So that's what I went on a journey to do for about 1.5 years, and actually met Faith in the middle of that journey when I was exploring and analyzing all sorts of different religions and faiths and philosophies and ways of living life. And I really tried not to focus on Christianity too much at the beginning, because I felt like that's all that was given to me growing up, and instead focused on all sorts of other things and explored and read books and visited places. But eventually God worked through that and really brought me back to Christianity through reading a Timothy Keller book and just getting to spend time with God, and just realizing that, like, when I prayed that prayer when I was saved, was just, God, I've been trying to do it all by myself, and it's not working. It is just not working. I need you to come into my life and redeem me for my sin.
Yeah.
And the most transcendent joy and gratitude in that moment, the likes of which I will never, ever forget. It was incredible. And since that day, seeing, the joy and gratitude I felt in that moment, and then every day since, as I've grown in sanctification. So it just to connect it all together, Faith and I met while I was in that journey, when I was telling Faith, like, oh yeah, we were just friends at the time. I was like, oh yeah, maybe I'll get married when I'm like 28 or 30 or something. And, I'm not really all about that. And, I'm trying to figure myself out. But then as soon as God presented it to me, as soon as I had my foundation in life really figured out, and I knew that it was going to be about being on fire for God and for the gospel and for Jesus, then it was a complete no-brainer, because suddenly Faith went from somebody who was my friend and I really admired to now somebody who's like, wow, she aligns with me so well. And so we started dating about a month later. And
it wasn't soon after.
And then got engaged a year after that.
Yeah, so we dated for about a year and got engaged.
Okay, so this story is very interesting. So many different layers that I would love to go to, because one, I could hear somebody listening to this and be like, one, that's amazing, God is good. But then two, Faith, from your perspective, because obviously, like you said, how long were you all friends before you actually started dating?
9 months.
9 months. So you guys were friends for 9 months, and you were kind of seeing his journey. Was there any hesitation on your end of dating him, mainly because, okay, he's still fresh in the faith, when we're thinking long term of a lifetime? Was there any hesitation there? Because I know sometimes people are like, be careful of dating somebody that maybe have just come to the faith. But I'm just curious, from your perspective, what was that like?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I had received that input from others, and I had the biggest amount of peace around it. That's kind of, I can't really describe it. It's indescribable, that I just knew, even whenever we were friends, I knew the Lord was going to save him. I just had so much faith. That summer, like, he got saved in like August, early September of, was it 22? Yeah, 22. I was praying for him daily that summer, just so full of faith that the Lord was going to save him. He had all of the head knowledge. He served in church through high school, and it wasn't like starting from ground zero. Like, he knew the Bible. He drifted away in college big time, and that heart flip, like in what is it? Not Ephesians, but it's Ezekiel, I believe, that talks about taking the heart of stone and giving a heart of flesh, and so that we will have the desire to walk in his statutes. And I saw that so evidently in Thomas, how whenever we would have just conversations as friends around Jesus, his heart would be so stoned. And then when he got saved radically, his whole predisposition changed, and his whole demeanor, like, he was a completely different person. He was like, okay, let's find a church. I'm so excited to get plugged into a small group. Immediately got plugged into a small group. Then after that, wanted to start serving, and led us to starting to serve. And I had dated a lot of guys before that said they were Christian, but none had the personal relationship with Jesus that was so evident like Thomas had. And that really stood out to me, how he was so on fire. And I wouldn't really recommend this to other people, to join the same small group with the person that you're dating either. But it's kind of like a no-brainer to us, because we just had so many conversations while we were dating and was on the same page about everything until like he was saved, and then the Jesus part, obviously, which covers so much, was on the same page then, and just radically being able to see that difference. I wouldn't necessarily like recommend it to other people, but it was the story that God created for us and that designed for us, and just so much peace and confidence around it. In such a way that I can't describe. And it obviously worked out, because now we're engaged. But
no, I love what you're saying, because I think sometimes, in especially Christian dating, people try to put it in, this is how you do it. There's a one size fits all, and that's not really the case. Obviously, there's specific guidelines laid out in God's word that are clear. Obviously, premarital sex is being one. That's a no-no. But there's, when it comes to people's stories and people's journeys, there's not a one size fits all of journey. And it's funny, because me and Pauline's story to some degree is similar to yours, not quite, but we knew each other. Pauline actually knew me before I got saved, like a month or two before I gave my life to Christ, which is coming up 10 years next month, which is just, I'm so
praise God.
That's awesome.
Yeah, that is crazy to me. But we met, and I was actually dating somebody else when we met. And if you want to hear our story, we got a whole podcast about it. Yeah. So I'll drop it right there. But was interesting, because she knew me like a month or two before I got saved, and I ended up getting saved, and then like a year and some change later, we started dating. So similar in the sense that I was still, some people would say, a new believer, and obviously it's worked out. It's been great. But I think one of the things you said, Faith, which is so true, is you saw so much fruit. Because there's a difference. Just because you've been saved for 30 years doesn't mean you have any fruit. It doesn't mean that you have a relationship with Jesus. So time doesn't necessarily matter. Time matters to some degree, because as God is bringing us all on a journey, the longer you're walking with him, hopefully the closer you get to him. But when it comes to, should I date this person or not, obviously you want to see fruit in their life like you did. But then also, like you said, you were talking to God about it and had that peace that you should move forward. Yeah. So often we see something we like, and instead of going to God about it, we just rush into it, and then that's how we get hurt. So like you said, we're not saying, oh, that worked out for them. They both dated people who were fairly new to the faith. No, I'm not recommending that by any stretch from a mass perspective. But if God is leading you to that direction, you don't have to have fear if and you have community also saying, yes, this is God. So I just love that.
Yeah, it was really cool. In the process of, I had just moved to Raleigh, and I was church shopping in a sense. I was trying to find my home church, and then him being saved was looking for a new church. So that journey we did together, which was neat, of finding what would be our home church, getting plugged into our small group together, and them discipling us and mentoring us so heavily over that year that we were dating. And being able to talk about the small group topics together, and just building on that foundation of Jesus was crucial. Even before we started dating, I remember this one conversation that we had, because we have very different dating histories, with him dating one person for 5 years and then me dating multiple people for short stints, was, how do you see dating? Is it intentionally for marriage? Is it to test and be tested? How long do you think that you would want to date before getting engaged? Now both out of school, and what does that look like for you? And so that was a conversation that we had even before we started dating, and that wasn't necessarily directed at each other. That was just in general of time frame, and we both settled on around a year. I think I shared like a year time frame. Having that goal and setting it isn't for everybody, but we would really recommend having a time frame of, okay, by this set date, we would love to like have had the intentional conversations that need to be had, seeing each other in different situations, and spend the time and quality time together that's necessary to discern if we want to move forward into engagement and spend the rest of our lives with each other. And so that's a huge recommendation, I think.
Okay. So you just said something good that I would love if we can go a little deeper on.
Sure.
So you were talking about dating somebody that has a different background than you.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like that's not something that's talked about a lot. Was there any trepidation, for lack of a better word, of like, I don't know if I can date somebody that has, in your case, dated one person for so long, or for you, Thomas, dated multiple people. Was there any hesitations towards that, or was it just a matter of having conversations and then just being open to it?
It wasn't a huge factor for me. I don't know. I'd be curious to hear for you, but for me, it wasn't a huge factor. Maybe partially because it was like, you know, you had moved all the way from Missouri to Raleigh as well, so it was like a big, difference there. And but I could tell very clearly that Faith wasn't like wrapped up in any of her old relationships or anything. I think it'd been like a year since your last one or something. So.
Yeah, and that's also what I would recommend too, is like leaving space between serious relationships and taking that time. That we had both been single for over a year at that point, I think, when we started dating. So for me, like 5 years is a really long time, and
Yeah.
like I could barely wrap my head around the relationships that I had, like not lasting for very long. I think that was like an insecurity of mine of, man, I can't get a relationship to last over 6 months. And then the one very previously, I had the intention of just dating for a year. And so when that year time frame came up, with this other guy, I made the decision to step out of it because I couldn't see it leading to marriage. And I was so glad that I did that. But it kind of proved in a sense that I could last like a little longer in a relationship, right? But now, like being spiritually mature and growing so much over my time in college, and since then, I've grown in confidence that the commitment is action and it's not based on feeling. And love is an action that whenever you're close to Jesus, like you said earlier, anything's possible. And a marriage that lasts our whole lifetime is possible. And so, yeah, it was different at the beginning, knowing that you had only dated one person, because I also was like, does he really know what he wants, since he only dated one person? And they started dating in high school, so you were so young and such a transitional time in your life. But the peace, I just, like I said, is indescribable, that I just knew. And it's funny because people would always say that to me, when you know. I was like, what does that mean? I don't get that. And then,
when you know.
And then I knew what it meant finally. But
I like what you said about having at least, I mean, you didn't say having at least a year, but you two had a year after each breakup to kind of get yourselves whole again if needed, and then also just allow yourselves time to resettle the relationship. Me and Pauline are big proponents of that as well, because that's how you end up jumping from relationship to relationship, because you never took a second to breathe and heal and realize, like, okay, what did I do last time for that not to work? Maybe it wasn't your fault that the relationship didn't work, but was there something in evaluating a person to date to begin with that you could have done better? Just having time to be able to reflect, ask God, can definitely be helpful. Now, Faith, you said something about leaving a past relationship. I don't want to be naive to the fact that there may be somebody listening to this right now who knows that the person they're dating probably isn't who they should continue with, but they're scared to take that leap of faith. Especially you as a coach, you do this all day, encouraging people. What would you say to somebody who is not sure if they should make the decision that they know they should in ending a relationship?
The trust that you have in Jesus, I think, determines our actions, to be quite blunt. And if you really trust your Creator and you know that He is with you in every single step of your life, you can do hard things because you have Him with you. Apart from Him, we can do nothing, and we are very weak. But with Him, we have the strength to do the painful thing that might cause, a painful season, but not a painful life. And so that one decision of momentary or seasonal pain is worth it, to not commit yourself to someone that you know isn't the best option for you, or not like as great of an option as God intended, because He really does want the best for us. And we don't believe in soulmates. I believe that I could have married a ton of different people that would have been great options, and Thomas the same. But there's a decision that has to be made of, like, you are better suited for some than others, right? And we have so many similar passions, and we get along so well. I feel like that's what I would share, I guess, going back to the piece of advice, though, is to deepen your relationship with Christ. Have that be the focus. If you want to make a change in your life, if you want to do something hard, like break up with someone that you know isn't the right fit for you, focus on chasing Jesus, because He is with the brokenhearted, and He will get you through anything.
It's better to have a painful season than a painful life. Good gracious, girl, you better preach on here. If this is what we can expect from the coaching, I'm sign everybody up, because that was awesome.
Thank you,
Thomas. I would love to get your perspective, because obviously you guys dated and now you're engaged. What, for you, was there any intentional conversations that you all had? Was there any books you read? Was there something that you all did, in your opinion, that helped you feel confident to take that next step? Because obviously, most people, the man is the one that's going to propose, and 99% of the cases, 2024 maybe it's getting less, who knows? But in your case, and in my case, and in every case we would like to promote, you proposed. Was there something that made you feel confident in taking that step, as far as how you all dated?
That's a great question. What made me feel confident taking the step to propose to Faith? Well, I did a lot of study on the methodology behind that question. I'm a very analytical person. Yeah, there's a couple schools of thought. I won't know though.
Oh my goodness, you're so funny.
I will just say that I think it is very possible that God comes down and just lightning bolt, boom, Thomas, Faith is the one for you. Go propose. And I think that
it's not super likely.
It's somewhat unlikely that He will just give a lightning bolt like that. I think that it's very important that we, as men especially, and as women as well, take personal responsibility for making a choice. And it's very different from other choices, because it's not just a choice to love someone today, but is a choice to continue to choose to love them forever. And like Faith said, love is an action and not a feeling in this case. And so I just feel very passionately that, we should be very open to God directly telling us this is the one or this is not the one. She's the one, she's not the one. He's the one, he's not the one. And we should take personal responsibility for, if that doesn't happen, we need to pray diligently. We need to be with the Holy Spirit. We need to take it to God. We need to bounce it off of other people in our lives, or trusted advisors who can tell us any of our blind spots, because we all have them. And those things can help us to come to what is ultimately a choice to continue making that choice every single day.
Yeah, we read a book together, also a 52-week devotional that was for dating couples specifically, that I really enjoyed doing with you weekly, because I felt like that stirred up conversation stuff for us to talk about. And currently doing a workbook through our engagement season and reading the book called You and Me Forever by Francis Chan with our premarital counselor. And we would highly recommend premarital counseling. People do it. do it.
We and Pauline read that book as well, and that book is humbling because you ain't gonna have it. You shouldn't have any fun in marriage, almost. But it's good to remind you of the weight of marriage. That marriage isn't just something to play with, but it's something that is supposed to bring glory to God and be a reflection to other people, Christ and the church. So I love that. Do you remember the name of the 52-day devotional you all did?
I think I have it over there. I'll send it to you as soon as we get done.
Something, a couple's devotional.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, because what I'm hearing is you all put in work, because so often people reserve. Honestly, people don't even do any work on relationships, unfortunately, when we're talking about a mass scale. But sometimes people wait till they get married then I'll start investing in reading books or going to marriage conferences. But really, even when you're single, there's books that you can read. There's things you can do to continue to prepare yourself. But then when you're dating, there are things that you want to do to learn the other person and learn yourself. And I think that is so crucial. And probably, like you said, why you all felt and have felt confident to be able to step into this next season. Now, I would love to hear how you all actually got proposed, or how you actually proposed, Thomas. Was it a surprise? Did you always know Faith? Everybody's story is so different. I'm curious what it was for you all.
I had a feeling.
She had a feeling. It was the case where, like I said, once I made that decision, I decided Faith was going to be the one for me forever. Then just started putting all the machinery into motion of talking to parents and getting their blessing and finding a ring and planning it out. And we had talked about it at a high level before, so I had a general idea of what Faith would like. And that was really important to me, that it be something that she liked, but also something that first and foremost was honoring to God. And so for me, like you said, there's a reason why 99% of the time it's the man who's proposing to the woman. And I think it's less about, like, for example, having a ring or something that's not like in the Bible, right? Or, the exact way that we propose these days and make it a whole big surprise not in the Bible. So I tried to carefully discern between the things that are actually biblical and the things that are just added on in our culture today. But it was really important to me. And I think what it embodies when the man proposes to the woman is saying, like the verse in Ephesians where it says, hey, as the man, I'm telling you that I'm going to lay down my life for you as Jesus laid his life down for you. Yeah. And so I'm surrendering my entire life. I'm going to die to myself every single day for you. And that's to me what engagement and the proposal was all about. And so when I wrote Faith a letter where I said that, and I had that be really big in what I told you verbally as well. And but the actual story, we did it at a park. It was wonderful. It was a very special place to us because it was a place we had walked around before.
It was beautiful
while we were dating. And actually, it was such a God thing. It looked like it was going to be beautiful weather all that week. I woke up that Saturday morning. I'd already flown her parents in. I mean, we had everybody there. There's no rescheduling this thing. And then pouring down torrential, just huge torrential downpour, right? And it's battering down my window. I'm texting around guys, I don't know. I had my rain plan was just push it back or forward by 3 hours. But if it was just deluge the entire day, I had no rain plan. So I was texting our pastor, can I use the church? He's like, yeah, if you have to. I was texting my co-working space, hey, can I do it? Move the office out and do it there. They're like, yeah, if you have to. But luckily then, it was incredible. God opened up this 3-hour window when the rain just stopped, just enough time to decorate. We had the moms there decorating. And then for us to come through and for me to take her through it and propose. And then literally we got on a horse-drawn carriage right afterwards, which was really fun. Soon as it dropped us off at the restaurant, as soon as it dropped us off and we went inside, boom, torrential rain again. So we were just very grateful for God letting us have our
very
moment.
Grateful.
Horse-drawn carriage, you just flexed on all of us. Okay. I see you.
That was amazing. Felt like
fun.
A princess.
It was very fun.
Yeah, no, that's I'm happy that it worked out for y'all, because obviously rain and an outside proposal is not fun.
Yeah.
So I'm curious. Well, first of all, I gotta back up, because you said something during that I don't want people to miss. The reason why you proposed, because you wanted to remind. You didn't exactly say it like this, but it was essentially a reminder that, like, you're supposed to die to yourself as the future husband every day in marriage. And as you were saying that, it just reminded me that that's what marriage is about. That's what you're signing up for. So often we glamorize marriage, and there is a lot about marriage that is amazing. But at the end of the day, in order for it to work and be successful and not end in irreconcilable differences, you're signing up to die to yourself every day. And the interesting thing is, you all know the Bible talks about how marriage between a man and woman is a reflection between Christ and the church. And obviously, we know that Christ died for us. But it's so interesting. I never thought about it like this. The woman has to die too, because if you think about it, what does God ask us to do? We have to die to ourselves in order to live for Him. And I just think that's such a beautiful picture of when you get married. And obviously, it doesn't sound beautiful, right? Nobody wants to die to themselves. But when you remember that when you died to Christ, you got a whole new life that has been better than it was before you didn't die to yourself. The same thing happens in marriage. When you die to yourself, now you get to build something beautiful together that is better than it was when it was just you by yourself. So thank you for sparking that. That's a good reminder for me as a married man.
That's
for
awesome.
sure.
Mm-hmm.
So one thing I would love, and either both you can go or just one person, is there one thing that has stood out in this engagement phase, whether it be something you wish you would have known before you got engaged, something that you've learned that you think is going to help you when you get married? I'm curious if there's been anything that's kind of stuck out, since you're right in the middle of it.
That's a good question. Everybody's been asking me, and heads up for anybody who's about to get engaged, everyone will ask you, oh, how's the wedding planning going? Oh, wow, is the wedding planning just really, oh, man. And I'm just like, I really delight in, I love telling them, oh, no, it's going great. We're really not very focused on it. And they're like, what do you mean not? I thought it was like the only thing you're allowed to do while you're engaged. And I say, well, actually, we're really trying to be intentional about spending the majority of our energy and time and effort on marriage planning.
Yeah,
and say,
that's
oh,
good.
what's marriage planning? Well, we've been doing our premarital counseling sessions. We have a whole book that we're going through, that we're doing like a workbook and talking back and forth about, and just asking the hard questions. We showed up to a premarital counseling session, and it was like our third one, and he had told us to prepare our budget, and like lay out a budget for what we'd use when we were married. And so we did that, and then he was like, hey, let's look at your budget. I was like, okay. So I showed it to him, and then I thought he was just gonna be like, oh yeah, it looks good. You put in some effort, looks good. No, we went line by line by line for like an hour and a half of deep dive and like getting feedback on it. I was like, man, this is what Christian community looks like.
Yeah.
This is what true preparation for life together looks like, because it is drastically different.
Yeah.
It is drastically different. So
true.
I'm very excited for the chapter that is ahead, and I'm very excited for the way that we're preparing for it, and just getting to share that with people and normalizing this idea that, hey, I don't want it to all be about the wedding. I mean, the wedding is a beautiful thing. It's a holy ceremony. It's incredible.
And it's just one day.
But it's just one day compared to, I mean, it's what, 0.0001% of your entire life or something. So we wanted to focus on marriage prep more than wedding prep.
I'll piggyback off of that. And during engagement, especially, I started to notice that Thomas is way more disciplined than I am. And he has built a routine in singleness and dating that I did not have. And whenever I thought of us being married together, and, we talked about what we wanted our days to look like in marriage, that included having a greater sense of intentionality around moving my body, working out, eating healthy, and especially preparing meals at home. And so that's what I've been focusing on over the past few months, especially, is how can I become equipped to not just have a drastic change after the wedding day and like my life's like, changing in all aspects, but to get equipped in engagement by having my workouts on the regular, cooking more. I didn't cook before we got engaged, so learning how to cook better, to prepare meals for him in marriage, and just deciding to be a little bit more intentional, so that I'm a better wife whenever we get married. And that learning curve, I don't start learning whenever we get married. I start learning before.
Building the habits now that will carry us through. Exactly.
Yeah.
I love that. No, I think that's so smart. And honestly, some of you may be listening and you're not dating anybody, you don't have any prospects, but there's things you can do now to set yourself up to have a better dating life, a better married life. Maybe you like to talk to a lot of people of the opposite sex and there's no boundaries there whatsoever. Maybe that's a step that you could take and starting to just create some healthier boundaries around that. Because when you get married, you really think the other person's going to be okay if the boundaries there aren't in a healthy place. So this is little things like that. It could be cooking. It could be maybe it's washing your laundry on time and not leaving it on the bed. Maybe it could be taking shorter showers. Like there's just a lot of different things that we do that when you start joining your life together with somebody else, they may look at it and be like, that's not going to work. I remember for me, we talked about how I came from a divorced family. So growing up, a lot of times I would have a birthday party with my dad's side and a birthday party with my mom's side. And I remember when me and Pauline started dating, she was like, why do you do this? Like, this is too much. Like, she's thinking down the road when we have kids. She was like, are we going to be having 5 different birthday parties for one person? She's like, that's not realistic. And because of her, I started having those joint birthday parties, and it's been so great. I'm glad that because I had somebody else who could look into my life, similar to you, Faith, and be like, you know what? I'm not doing this the best way possible. And that's the beauty of marriage, is it helps you become all that God has called you to be.
For sure.
So I would love, and if there's something else you all want to share, please, you can share that. But if not, I would love for you to talk a little bit more about your coaching business and anything else that you all want to plug, because there's some people who've been listening to this, and I'm sure they're like, I need to know them. I want to learn everything that they got going on. So if you could share that, I would love for you to do that.
I've got just one more thing to share real quick about one of my favorite parts of premarital counseling has been how much time and attention we've been able to put into our finances and how we're going to combine our finances and just things you don't think about. Again, like going into premarital counseling thinking it's going to be in my head a little bit more of a check the box thing, but then it turns out, like for example, I was going into it thinking, oh, well, now we'll have 2 incomes and wow, we're going to have so much power to do all sorts of things, all that stuff. And then our wonderful premarital counselor is like, well, okay, but tell me what happens. So if she gets pregnant and then you're about to have a kid and then she wants to stay home and then you got used to living on 2 incomes and now you're down to 1. I'm like, wow, yeah, that's a really good point. That's a really good point.
Have you heard of Thomas?
What did you say?
Double income, no kids.
Oh yeah, the dink. Yeah.
It's like you were trying to have that. That sounds awesome.
Well, we definitely want to have kids, but I just wasn't really thinking about, there's so much psychology behind money and whatever stories you were told as a kid about what money meant to you or didn't mean and what you're allowed to talk about, not allowed to talk about. So I think money is a really cool quantifiable way to reveal what's really valuable to us. And so I just encourage any other dating or engaged couples out there to really engage and talk about money early on. Talk about the impacts from your parents and how you were raised, and get other people in your life too, like a premarital counselor or just a parent or somebody who can speak into your financial position. Because when you make decisions or have these conversations in a vacuum just by yourself or just the 2 of you, you can miss out on really important insights.
Yeah, that's so good. Another thing to add is, above all, making sure that you are unified as a couple in behaving in a decision-making sense as one. Obviously not becoming one intimately until you're married, but during engagement season, decision-making as one. Because, for instance, I moved into an apartment 3 months ago, which will be our apartment, whenever we're married, and we made that decision together even before we're married on where we wanted to live, what type of apartment we wanted, all the details, because the decisions that, and I also got a new car. Like I traded and sold a car within the past few months, thanks to his wonderful help. So doing things together that are big, that will be impactful and affect you, like the other person's life, I think is really important. As well as I've seen couples do holidays separately until they're married, like even if they're engaged over the holidays, being apart. And we really enjoyed being together on the holidays this year, like both being in the same place. We didn't do that whenever we were dating, but just when it comes to decision making, the more that you can be unified in that and how you spend your time together will reflect to your families how you are becoming one and working together as one. So I think that's my last piece of advice. I've been reading a book called Let Me Be a Woman by Elizabeth Elliot, and I just finished it. And for anyone that's looking to really dive into a book, I would recommend this one, especially someone that's wanting to prepare for marriage. Elizabeth Elliot lived in the mid 1900s, and she is what I would call, a great theologian almost. She's written a lot of famous books, but this one in particular talks about putting your faith into action as a woman and as a wife. And much of the book is directed towards her daughter, who is engaged and preparing for marriage. And in Genesis, it talks about how Eve was created. Eve was created for man, and how Eve was created to be the helper, the helpmate, which is a word that's used to describe Holy Spirit and the Trinity. And so it's a very strengthening word. We have a lot of power as women to be able to build up, support, encourage, make our husband's life easier. And learning how to do that and put that into action has been revealed to me a lot in this book. And this kind of segues into what I've developed over the past 5 months, which is a community of women who want to put their faith into action consistently. And we meet weekly on Monday mornings to really make weekly commitments around spiritual disciplines, relational health. It could be health and wellness, like fitness or entrepreneurial endeavors. It's different and personal to each individual, but this community has just really grown over the past 5 months, and we're looking to expand, and I'm about to announce all that soon. But that is just something I've been really fired up about recently, is putting our faith in action, not just talking the talk, but actually walking the walk and living different and living in such a way that people say, I want to know Jesus because of them. And, it talks about in scripture how faith without works is dead, or faith without action is dead. You could also put it that way. And we want to live lives that are fruitful, that are consistent with what we say and what we believe. So if anyone would like to join this community of women, it is amazing, and would love to invite you to join us there on every single Monday morning.
Wow. That does sound amazing, because I'm sure there's so many people who are like, I wish I had a community of other believers to help me do this, or I may already have one, but I want even more people. So that's a great way. How exactly can they join? Do they just go to your Instagram?
Yeah, if you click on the flow page of my Instagram bio, that link, they can scroll down to hit Faith in Action, and it'll pop up with a way for them to enter their name and email, and then I can shoot them the Zoom link, or they can just DM me Faith in Action, and I'll send them
And what's your IG handle?
Faith and Coaching.
faith and coaching. I'll make sure that all of that is in the show notes. If you are listening to this and are interested, that definitely sounds like a great opportunity to be able to connect with other women who are like-minded. And
Yes. Yes, and it's virtual, so you can literally be anywhere as long as the time works for you. And we have an exciting announcement coming soon. I don't want to spoil it, but if that time doesn't work for you, there might be more opportunities in the future. So just let us know if you're interested, and we'll help you out. But yeah, it's wonderful because it's all age range. Like we have 22 to 62 in the group, and some are entrepreneurs, some are not, but the common thread between us all is that we love Jesus and we really want to put our faith into action and have that consistent accountability to hold one another accountable to do so.
I love that. A little Titus 2 action going on with the generations there.
That's right.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank y'all so much, Faith and Thomas. I really appreciate it. I think there's a lot that people can chew on in this episode from beginning to the end. So this has been another episode of the W Podcast, and we'll see y'all next week. Thanks for watching this video.
To get more Christian relationship advice, subscribe to our channel.
And make sure you check out our other videos as well.